going to welcome to the stage Rob Mitchell, who some of you may have seen earlier in the Startup Brewery Challenge as a judge. Rob is the VP of Sales for Manhattan Beer. He runs their craft and specialty division. And in his presentation, he's going to provide an inside look at the Manhattan Beer operations, talking about some of the brands that they sell, how they go to market, their territories that they serve, and just sort of what their resources are like. And then he's also going to discuss, sort of the criteria he uses to select new craft partners. And then afterwards, we're going to have a little conversation on the couch. So, Rob, I'll let you kind of take it away.
Thanks, Chris. As he said, I'm Rob Mitchell. I'm the Vice President of our craft and our wine and spirits divisions over at Manhattan Beer. 24-year employee at Manhattan Beer, and have seen tremendous growth with our company and craft beer in general. So let me walk through. I'm going to give a little corporate overview. We're going to talk about our sales organization, some operational facts that are a little different, our craft portfolio, how we build for the future, and then how we pick our partners. So when you talk about our territory footprint, we cover the 14 counties of southern New York State. Really 15, we go a little into Delaware County because it's part of the Catskills that nobody else wants to touch. When we talk about Manhattan Beer Distributors, we are a 35 million case wholesaler, so we have a very large organization. I put up this slide to talk about the fact on our sales side, it's 575 people, 800 in operations, human resource department of 9, and even as for where Manhattan Beer started 35 years ago, as Simon the founder was the only employee to where he is now, where you have to have large departments in the organization to help you as your ultimate goal is to build brands, sell beer, deliver beer. And then a finance department. New York State is, we give direct service to 25,000 customers. It is not a COD state, so we have a large amount of money that moves through our organization. Slide over the last 15 years, really, 1998 was a pivotal year. Manhattan Beer Distributors had grown to be a 7 million case wholesaler, mostly Corona, InBev, Boston Beer, and we merged with what was at the time a 10 million case Coors distributor. They were driver sales. Canada Dry Pepsi family became a 17 million case wholesaler. Over the last 15 years, we've been able to grow to 35 million cases. 35 is our goal for this year. And we've done that mostly through organic growth. We've had some new startup brands come on board, but we've also sold a lot of beer to competitive wholesalers, biggest being Stella Artois that we sold to Anheuser-Busch during that transition. I wanted to talk about how we're segmented a little in New York. It's a different market. One of the biggest segments you see here for our overall business is the beverage centers. Those are the home distributors, beer stores. They're kind of unique because they act as a fourth tier. They have the ability also to sell to retail. So in some cases, your salesmen compete against your customers based upon whatever pricing structure you have. So there's some very large home Ds who have their own sales force who go out and try to sell. Some have evolved and now start to collect their own brands and kind of morphing into a more traditional distributor. Grocery deli, 29% of our overall business. That's all those bodegas, mom and pop shops up and down the street. The supermarket channel or the traditional channel, including club and convenience, is also about 25% of the business. And then in our traditional business, on-premise is only 19%, but that number's a little skewed again because of the amount of people who buy from those home distributors, either to hide for tax purposes or looking just to have a different source of getting their product. Our current mix, and the numbers are wrong, I just got an email, there's 10 new SKUs went on today, so we're at 1966 as of today, 70 brands, 209 brand families, mostly beer, most of our volume is in beer, 54 suppliers, 1,700 of those SKUs are in beer. Non-alcoholics, we have a non-alcoholic business that really is built to accentuate what we do well in beer. We're Voss Water, we're Pellegrino Pana, we do a little Nestle Pure Life just as a convenience. We do a coconut water because it fit, and we do Red Bull just for the on-premise segment because, again, those fit with what we were doing as an organization. We also have just started 2 years ago, we activated our wine and spirits license, and as we've seen You know, everybody talks about craft beer and the difficult time that craft brewers have finding distributors. The wine and spirits business is really dominated by a couple of very large players. And as craft spirits has evolved, and craft spirits from a lot of craft brewers as well, for them to find a home has been difficult. And with our infrastructure, we felt that we were perfectly situated to help develop craft spirits brands and some wine, but our focus is on craft distilled spirits. We see this very similar path that we saw with craft brewing. One of the big things about Manhattan Beer, I talked about that manpower in our 14-county footprint. We deliver out of 4 facilities, but we really have what we consider more than that in terms of business units. Home distributors, we separate out, and we put a team just against those home Ds. But our 4 facilities, we're out in Long Island. We start up on the right, broken down, and you can see how many routes we have. Over the years, from going to $17 million to $35 million, what we've continued to invest in is hardware and software. Hardware being trucks and warehouses, software being manpower. We have the ratio we have of pretty much 100 accounts for a sales rep, and that's not because that's all they have. That's because that's what the universe is defined as, with a sales rep, a sales supervisor for every 4 reps, an on-premise supervisor in the segmented area with an on-premise supervisor. We have craft and wine and spirits specialists who are an overlay working within the organization to help when you have 25,000 customers, and when we talk about craft being already in over half of those accounts, craft is omnipresent. You know, it's a 10-share market still, so while it is distribution is there, volume hasn't caught up yet, but you have to have craft salespeople and people tied into craft across the whole segment. Some of the things that separate us, when you look at sales associates, those are the people who do the heavy lifting. Those are the people on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays are back in those supermarkets packing out the stores and making sure that the brands we've placed are refilled, restocked, taking care of quality, rotation. You know, it's a large organization. I think when I started, there was 13 of us in one room back in 1990, and to see where it's gone has been pretty incredible. A couple things about operations. We run about 300 trucks a day. A day like today, I think we have, yesterday we had over 5,000 stops out there. Units today would probably be about 150,000 units going out, and that means there's got to be 150,000 units coming back into our facilities to replenish. We service, our owner Simon had a belief when he started that you have to deliver people what they want when they want it. So we've always had no minimums. We always have delivered people what they want when they want it. We have stores in New York City that we deliver 6 days a week to. They're not big drops, they're drugstores, but that is what the market calls for, and that's how we've built our business. So we deliver all 14 counties 6 days a week, no minimums, no specified delivery days for any market. Of those 300 trucks, we're up to 70 now that run on compressed natural gas. We run that out of 4 filling stations. We've just moved into a new facility, so we're just going online with a 160,000 square foot solar farm that will produce 1.1 megawatts of energy. New York is a deposit state, so when you're such a large distributor as we are, you get to pick up a lot of trash, to the point of 182 million bottles we recycled last year. 88,000 cans and 39,000 pallets that we chip up and turn into mulch. Glass we separate and sell. Cans, obviously, we just crush and sell. We receive about 80% of our volume by rail, which has eliminated 24,000 trucks of overland trucking coming into New York City. So we're in a new building now as our corporate headquarters. Our goal is to get LEED certified in that building. That's it's a tall order, especially in a environment like the Bronx where we work out of, but it's a cultural change that we're working to evolve to. Touch quickly on our craft portfolio. About 7.5 years ago, we made a decision as we were looking at the marketplace that though we were happy with where our business was going, we were seeing that the market was evolving, and we realized that we needed to make changes. You saw that I talked a lot about craft supervisors we had. We started a new division, kind of a blank slate, looked out and really hired different people than we had. We have a well-trained sales organization, but they weren't necessarily craft-specific trained. We all know that that's a different sell, that's a different mindset that you have to get. One of the first people I hired showed up in flip-flops and shorts, and our director of training said, you going to hire that guy? I said, no, I'm going to beg him to take the job to work here at Manhattan Beer, because our culture where we were then and what we were seeing in craft was very different. I think we were, while we weren't 1.0 in terms of evolution, in terms of distributors switching over to becoming more craft-centric, we weren't 2.0. We were slightly behind the curve, but able to invest and make up a lot of time for that. So, Sam Adams is our largest craft partner, down to, and filled a need, down to Oyster Bay is one of our newest craft partners. They're a 4-barrel brewery that, services a small piece of just the North Shore of Long Island. So we've only have 28 suppliers now in our craft portfolio. We look to add. One of the things we think about is, and I get into it, when you're as big as we are in terms of the amount of people we have, you can eat big elephants, but you still got to do it one bite at a time. We have over 1 million square foot of warehouse space. We could easily add brands and packages and suppliers and 25,000 customers you could find somewhere to sell their product, but that's not our long-term vision. That's not what we think has made us successful short-term and what we know will make us successful for the long term. Our craft beer sales, Brewers Association defined craft. In 2010 to where we're pretty confident we'll end this year, we'll have grown over 1 million cases, going from 1.2 to 2.4 million cases over that time period on just those brands we talked about there. So while it is not, when you compare that to 35 million cases as an overall distributor, it's still a small piece of the pie. But when you look at the percentage of growth and what we're getting out of craft every year, it's becoming a more and more important part of our overall organization. Craft share, I talked about a little before. On the off-premise, 5,700 accounts year-to-date have purchased something from craft, and that's still not 50% yet. But that you really have a lot of bodegas and a lot of inner city in there where they're a little slow to come to the craft party. But as the market continues to evolve and the neighborhoods evolve and people, the gentrification of neighborhoods, you start to find hipsters and backpacks living in areas where you did not previously see them. In the on-premise, we're up to over year-to-date 7,300 accounts have purchased something in craft. Obviously, on-premise, there's a lower cost of entree into trade. There's more tap line availability, people changing more. So the consumer and the retailer has been more willing to invest and try craft. And that number last year was at about 55%. So even this year, it's just continued to accelerate, which we're excited to see. Talking about brands, we talk about that, I don't know if you can consider that a limited portfolio or a large portfolio of craft suppliers. I think sometimes operation would say that it's growing too quick. It's hard for them, especially in 4 warehouses, to find. Just today, as I talked about, there's 10 new SKUs that hit in the last 4 days hit our floor. So that's 40 new spots in the warehouse that they got to find room for. When you have great people on your craft team that are really passionate and love craft, they're the first ones knocking on my door every morning and saying, what about this? Bringing me samples from their travels and breweries they've been to visit or people that they're friends with in the industry, and they're coming back and looking at us. The network of distributors, I spend a lot of time with a lot of my fellow distributors across the country, and the first question I ask them and they ask me is, hey, what's going on in your market? What about this guy? What about Sun King in Indianapolis? What's going on with him, and what are his plans, and what's he looking to do, and how is he as a business partner, right? It's not just about how much beer they sell, but how are they to deal with? Do they come with a plan, or do they just feel that because they make great beer that it's going to be everywhere? Social media, in this day and age, there's so much information out there about other markets and what's going on. Following Brewbound, following some of the other information highways and superhighways that stuff can come to you. And then brewery visits. We believe, we get out, some of our competitors go out, and I feel sometimes like they're stopping by every homebrew shop, and anybody who can buy 2 bags of malt, they're looking to sign. So I don't know if that's necessarily the right way of going about it, but we like to go out and visit the people and kick the tires, Simon, our owner, has always said, you want to go out and see who you're going to partner with. So we've worked really hard on doing that. What do we look for? There's no magic formula, right? Big, small, Oyster Bay Brewing Company, 4-barrel system, Sugar Hill, Celeste Brewer, she was bottles only for 6 years up in Harlem, fitting a niche. Obviously, Boston Beer on the largest scale shows you a lot of things about what works. But we don't think that there's any magic formula. There's nothing that any brewer is going to come to us as a potential partner, and we have to say, okay, you have to have this. Do you own your own fleet? Yes or no? You know, there's no questionnaire that we think anybody can answer. It's really a situational decision about what we think is going to fit for us. But there are indicators of success, right? Again, you can talk to some people, and early on in the conversations, you can get a sense of if you feel they might be a good fit for you as a distributor. And what's a good fit for us as a distributor might be different for, you know, one of the newest small guys, Remarkable Liquids, is a distributor of just really small craft brands in our market. So what's important to us and what's important to them might be really different from the distributor side, and also different from the brewer side. But I think one of the things the brewers have to think about, and I used this reference before about, you know, Wayne Gretzky and where the puck is, it's not thinking about where you want to be today as a brewer, but where you want to be in 5 years, and is your partner the right partner for where you want to be in 5 years? And that's something that I think both sides have to look at. My man Jim Cook, this is a people business. At the end of the day, you want to like the people you're dealing with. You want them to like you. You want to have an understanding, a commonality of their mission and our mission, their values and our values. So you really want to look at that. So we kind of took that on, we put it into a funnel about how we look at brands we want to take. First and foremost, you know, is there consumer market need? What do they bring different, other than, as Marty was saying, you can't just say you got quality beer, you just can't say you're local anymore. Those two things alone aren't enough to get you where you need to be. But for us then, it's also, does our organization have the ability to absorb, both from a sales side, you have to communicate that message internally to 500-600 people, operationally, do they have the ability to absorb this new supplier or the number of new suppliers that might be looking to bring in at one time? Does it add value to our business, not only to us at Manhattan Beer, but to the partners we already have? We believe strongly in the people we've already been doing business with. It doesn't do us any good just to bring in new brands and swap out draft lines. That doesn't help us to build brands. That doesn't help the people who have helped us to get to the point where we're at. So we want to get partners who help bring us and our partners to a place further down the road, enhance the value of our relationship with our consumer and our customer. You know, spirits, I just was yesterday talking to one of my guys. We have a great local bourbon, and craft beer gets you into a lot of doors, but then you bring in small batch, high quality spirits, and there's other places, especially on premise, that maybe were more mixology focused than even craft beer focused, and they say, no. I didn't need anything from Manhattan Beer, even though you guys deliver 25,000 to the customers, you're in 95% penetration, but now you have something different that you're going to bring me that enhances my value to my customer, ultimately the consumer. And then once we build that relationship, hey, what's your bottled water? Do you do Red Bull? Here's these other great craft brands I have. What can we do and be valued as a partner to help them come along? And does the money work? I mean, for both partners, we've had a couple guys have come down and we thought it was a great fit, and then they, you know, turn around and say they want to sell us kegs for $110 and they want us to go out at $129, and obviously that doesn't work. And that goes back to that understanding of both parties and what's going to happen in this relationship and what we need as a distributor, because we make all the money. We know that, you know, we're the bad guys who take all that money. You know, those 1,300 employees don't cost anything. Those trucks don't cost anything to run. But you have to have that understanding. And I think if you do that, I think, you know, it continues to get more difficult because there are more choices in terms of more brands, and there's definitely consolidation at the distributor level, so that makes it tougher in some avenues. But at the same time, I do see the evolution. I see there's at least 3 new distributors in our market that are out there and have started to pick up brands. And we wish them all luck, you know, there's room for them. And I think that's it, Chris, unless we want to get up and talk about some stuff.
Yeah, let's go talk about this a little bit more on the couch.
Sure.
Thank you. So I had a first question lined up, but since you said you make all the money, when do we get to ride on the private jet? And I hear...
There's no private jets.
That's what I keep hearing. That's
Yeah.
what I read in the op-eds. And,
No.
Yeah.
No. We're just a distributor out there like everyone else trying to work to make a living. Small family-owned operation.
So a lot of good points about the things you look for in a craft supplier. And, you know, I think what's particularly unique about your situation in New York is the recent franchise law change there. So for those that maybe aren't quite familiar, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 3% and 300,000 barrels. So if you produce less than 300,000 barrels and you're less than 3% of a wholesaler's business, you're free to change distributors for no cause, essentially for fair market value. Is that
That's correct. And
pretty accurate?
Manhattan Beer was a big proponent of that. We worked with our lobbyists hand in hand with our state association to get that bill passed. Puts us at odds with some distributors within our own state and some distributors across the country. But did they take my other slide down? But it's something that we believe in as a distributor. In our contract, it says, can we go right to that? It was after the end. Termination clause in Manhattan Beer's contract for all of our suppliers is that you can leave for 60 days notice for any reason or no reason. We don't believe in doing business with people who don't want to do business with us. Obviously, if as in any marriage, civil marriage, which we'll call this, there might be bumps in the road and things you have to work out with your partners. But if it ever comes to the point where somebody is truly unhappy with us, they have the right to leave. When Stella Artois, a brand that we had built in the U.S., obviously changed over and went to Anheuser-Busch, that was, I think, 8% of our volume, 10% of our gross profits. We didn't have to sell that. We could have. And there's still people in the state of New York who didn't give up those InBev brands to Anheuser-Busch. But we didn't believe in that. Our owner flew out on commercial plane to St. Louis and met with the Bushes and, made a pitch for why Manhattan Beer was the best distributor for their brand in New York City. But they're a branch, it's an AB branch, so they wanted that brand there. And, okay, it's like a divorce. Who gets the furniture and who gets the pretty fern plant? Let's just figure that out and move on. So it's worked for us. We haven't had anybody leave, but if they ever wanted to, they clearly could.
But you have benefited from it. You have taken on a few brands as a result of the change, correct?
Yeah, we have. There's some brands who were underserved in the market, and we're, as Jim Cook would say, "Let my people go." We're being held hostage, and Southampton on Long Island was with a distributor, and that's one that's still in litigation, so I don't really want to talk too much about that because they were terminated. The laws, the brewer can terminate. They were sold by TBS, and TBS terminated. But they were underserved in the market, in the town of Southampton when the retailers couldn't get the brand. I mean, that's wrong. Shipyard, another brand that was underserved, and all these brands we've taken, and they've seen tremendous growth. There's obviously potential. We paid fair market value for them. We don't mind paying fair market value, but we were able to realize return on our investment in that. There's some other brands that have looked to get out that might have been a good fit for us, but when we evaluated them, we didn't see that they're probably an upside for us, so we didn't take them.
And this was going to be my next question. When we were chatting before the conference, you had brought up this point of perhaps it sort of not actually working out like some craft brewers might think in terms of the willingness for wholesalers to say, okay, we definitely want to go out and get some of these brands now. Because when you're selling the distribution rights, you're effectively providing your competitor with some financial resources to go out into the marketplace and compete against you guys. So in New York specifically, do you think you'll see some wholesalers pass on some brands that these craft brewers might have otherwise thought, oh, somebody will pick us up, somebody will take us on if we're unhappy?
Yeah, I think it goes two ways. There's two things, right? If it's a small brand starting in the market and they have the ability to self-distribute, and we buy that brand from them, as we've done, one of the guys is here in the room, we gave them the money which enabled them to help build their business, which helps us. When we've gone out and bought some brands from one specific competitor, we've given them a big influx of cash, probably more cash than they made selling those brands over the lifetime of the brands. So you have to evaluate that now as there's this new generation of smaller, really niche players in the market, small craft distributors that have the ability to bring brands to a certain level. And in an ever-rotating market, that level gets smaller because new is only new for the first time you're through the tap lines. And then what do they do for an encore when they have struggled to get to that next level? Naomi was talking about the evolution of Allagash to get from great craft bar to sports bar. It's tougher now, especially as you're a small guy, to do that. You have to then evaluate as a distributor, no matter how great the brand is, are you going to turn around and hand your competitor, again, more money than he's made ever selling the brand? Is that the true value of it? That's really hard to determine, and that's something that I'm sure we haven't got to that bridge yet, but it's going to come soon.
And really, it's about figuring out what the upside is.
Upside for us, and at some points, not giving an upside to a competitor.
Do you think this might leave some craft brewers feeling like they can be a little bit more cavalier about their selection process when they're entering a state like New York, if they're out-of-state brewers, entering a state like New York and maybe not doing their due diligence or their homework and kicking the tires, as you say, and doing all that upfront legwork to make the right selection for the first time, because now they know, well, we can just leave if we want to.
I think if you're a brewer and you're not going out and doing your due diligence, regardless of what the franchise law says, regardless of what you think you'll be able to get out or your exit clause, and really getting into the marketplace and not just picking up the phone and calling the 4 great craft beer bars and asking them who the best craft distributor is, but really getting in the market, evaluating quality. We're at a crunch point right now, I think, in this industry where quality is really becoming paramount. Because there's so many more SKUs and because that is outkicked the coverage of the growth of the industry. If you're not out there and looking and seeing what distributors are doing for the brands that they have in terms of quality, I was in market last week, and when you're still seeing winter beer out there, winter, spring, and summer from the same brewery on the same shelf, that's not good, And in that challenge this morning, I talked about code dating. Everybody should have dates on. You should be able to easily see and make determinations because, again, just because you think you have the ability to get out, if you get with a bad distributor, a distributor who doesn't have the ability maybe to bring your brand where it should be and care for your brand the way it should be cared for, which I think is all part of building a brand. Everyone says, what does a distributor do to build a brand? We're hand in hand down the aisle together, hopefully for a long time. And if we're doing our job right on so many levels, and the brewery is doing their job right on the things that they bring, that's going to help build the brand. And quality is a big piece of that.
I only got time for one more question, and you brought up the brand building piece. And God, I wish I could go a million different ways with this final question for you, because I could sit here and talk about this all day. But Manhattan Beer, are you guys brand builders or are you guys brand managers? Because I think there's a difference.
I like to think we're brand builders. I think we have a proven track record of helping build brands, especially smaller craft breweries. A lot of times they're new to the game, new to the industry, and they don't have an understanding and the implication of the things they do. So by helping guide them in their decision-making process, and in some cases it's helping guide them not just for your market, but if they're one of your home guys, saying, what are you doing in this here? Where are you going other places? All that, I think, in an absence of huge consumer packaged good marketing, which a lot of guys don't have, helps build the brand. As Marty talked about, our distributor's ability to produce point of sale that's meaningful and impactful and ties in, hopefully, with a marketing plan that has been collaborative between the two. Quality, I like to think of us as more an evolutionary old school distributor. In the old school, you got a draft line, you put it on, it stayed forever. You made a package placement, it stayed forever, and you just worked it. That's still the core of going to be what's going to enable brewers to be successful long term. You have to be able to gain and hold real estate so that when the consumer comes in, rotation is nice, but there's still so many consumers who walk in and want to see what they want to drink. So I think that in itself helps market the brands.
Right. Everybody out there should find Rob at some point today and ask him just some of the criteria that he uses to select craft brands and really pick his brain, because it is truly important to have a really great, well-polished presentation before you walk into a guy like Rob's office. So access him at lunch and pick his brain, and thank you so much for sharing your insight.
Thanks, Chris.